A Great Night for a Ritual is a dungeon crawler arena hybrid game where no weapon is permanent and the only thing you can rely on is strategy. The player will use breakable items, weapons, and abilities to fight their way through enemy mobs. The perspective of the game is 2D top-down so that the player can make note of where the items are in the arena and find these enemy mobs. A Great Night for a Ritual will play like a dungeon crawler arena hybrid, sort of like Diablo 3 and Battlerite. The only difference between these games and A Great Night for a Ritual is the player is by themselves. They'll have less access to customizing their gear, and the whole point of the game is to kill off every enemy in a spectacular and new way to acquire the most ritual points, which are used to summon the elite mob. The player's goal is to fill the ritual bar by killing enemies that in turn grant ritual points. Once the ritual bar is filled, the player then needs to acquire the key to the next level of Bran Castle that is acquired after killing the final wave of enemies. The basic rules is that the player will fight their way through mobs of enemies using whatever weapons and tools they can find amongst the dead bodies, chests, and the enemies that they slay. The player can choose what items to leave throughout the dungeon and what items and weapons they want to use earlier in the wave sequence. This is important as it will determine how strong the enemies at the end of the level will appear to be. The player chooses their ability set before the game begins. These 3 different abilities will determine how the player will play the game. As the game progresses, the player acquires new abilities and new ability slots to expand their strategies. The player's total abilities then becomes 6 by the end of the game. The weapons the player picks up work in synergy with these 6 chosen abilities' passive qualities. These passive qualities boost one of the 3 damage types: blood, holy, and iron. Each of these damages have unique effects. Blood weapons will heal the player's health back. Holy weapons burn their targets over time. And iron weapons stagger enemies but have a slow animation set. The player is working against the mobs of enemies that spawn into the arena. The mobs are spawned into the game on specific timestamps, and at the end of the match, the elite mobs spawn onto the arena and will feature unique enemy types. For example, on one of the levels, the final wave features werewolves that hunt and smell at the players, so going invisible won't be a viable option when they are close by. After the player kills off the elite mob, they will then acquire 1 piece of the Vampire Hunter's original set. This set boosts the player's options for survival. For example, acquiring the boots will grant the player move speed, and later on the player unlocks a holy bracelet that allows its wearer to conjure holy beams of light from their palms that will then cause damage to the player's foes. The enemies the player faces are Dracula fanatics, vampire, and humans who worship the Count. These enemies have different types ranging from casters, marksmen, assassins, to warriors. So the player will be able to have access to a list of abilities that are mostly used for setting up plays and not causing damage. The player is being chased down by a mob of vampire scouts that are close-range attackers. As they are landing arrows being shot from their crossbow, the player suddenly vanishes, causing the mob to become unaware of where the player went. During this time, the player can choose to lure one of the enemies away using their second ability. Once the player has the enemy in another room, they can use their last ability to put the enemy to sleep and finally execute them for bonus points. Without using or breaking a weapon, the player was able to cut down the pack by 1. The development risk is that the team might not have cohesive sprite art in which some things about the game will be developed in a simplistic aesthetic design. I'm afraid that the things the player has to do won't be as rewarding while playing the game, and the experience won't continue to carry the player. Thank you for watching.
Created using Powtoon.